So you thought Harley Davidson was the problem? That overpriced, outdated, loud pile of chrome your uncle rides to impress every Sunday? Well, buckle up, because today we're flipping the script. Indian motorcycles, they add the so-called cooler alternative, might actually be worse. Let me break down the 7 reasons why. Number 7. The illusion of heritage. When people argue about which motorcycle brand has the most legacy, Indian motorcycles fans love to throw around a simple fact. Indian is older than Harley Davidson. You'll hear it all the time. Indian was founded in the year 1901. Harley was founded in the year 1903, case closed. But here's the thing. That fact, while technically accurate, is absolutely meaningless in the real world of motorcycles. Indian's heritage is not just an illusion, it's a marketing smokescreen, carefully designed to make you forget the half-century that Indian was completely and utterly gone. Let's get this straight right off the line. Indian motorcycles ceased to exist in the year 1953. That's not a temporary dip, that's not a rough quarter. That is full stop, end of the line, doors closed, lights out, and keys turned in. From the year 1953 all the way until the 21st century, Indian as a brand went through a chaotic mess of failed revivals, overseas licensing, legal disputes, and half-baked production runs that amounted to little more than logo slapping. There was no consistency, no lineage, no engineering continuity, and certainly no soul. The motorcycles produced under the Indian name during that period had absolutely nothing to do with the original Springfield-based company that pioneered early American motorcycles. During that time, Harley Davidson kept going. Yes, Harley had its rough patches too, especially during the American Machine and Foundry era when the company was sold to a conglomerate and quality control took a hit. But even during those darkest decades, Harley Davidson never stopped making motorcycles. The company kept engineers employed, it kept producing V-twin engines, it kept supporting dealerships and riders. Harley's bikes from the 1970s and 80s may have their quirks, but they still carry a direct bloodline from the bikes that came before and after. That is real heritage. Now fast forward to the year 2011. That's when Polaris Industries, best known at the time for their off-road recreational vehicles and snowmobiles, purchased the Indian name and finally brought some corporate stability to the brand. To Polaris's credit, they invested heavily in Indian. They built new platforms, they launched new engines, they created the Thunderstroke and Power Plus lines from the ground up. And they did what no one else could in the previous 5 decades. They made Indian a functioning motorcycle company again. But here's the kicker. Just because Polaris bought the name doesn't mean they inherited the legacy. A logo and a year stamped on a gas tank does not resurrect 50-plus years of missing history. Yet that is exactly what Indian Motorcycles marketing wants you to believe. They proudly slap "since 1901" on everything from advertisements to apparel, as if nothing happened in the middle. It's not just misleading. It's downright dishonest to compare Polaris-era Indians with pre-war Springfield bikes as if there's a direct, unbroken lineage. If Harley Davidson had shut down in the year 1955 and restarted in the year 2010 under new ownership, you can bet Harley fans wouldn't get away with calling it continuous heritage. The motorcycle community would never accept that. So why does Indian get a free pass? Because they frame themselves as the underdog. Because the bikes are modern and well-built. Because people want to believe in the myth. But it is still a myth. But if the fake history wasn't enough, wait until you see how Indian's pricing structure leaves even Harley looking like the bargain bin. This is the stuff Indian doesn't want you to hear. If you like your motorcycle content unfiltered and unapologetic, hit that subscribe button now. Number 6. Overpriced, underdelivered. There is something deeply ironic about a motorcycle brand that plays the underdog, brands itself as the rebellious alternative to Harley Davidson, and then proceeds to charge more for less. And yet, that is exactly what Indian Motorcycle does. For all the tech-heavy hype, sleek blacked-out styling, and flashy marketing, Indian's pricing model is aggressively out of touch with what riders actually want and what the competition delivers. Let us take a closer look at two of the most directly comparable bikes in the American bagger segment, the Indian Challenger Limited and the Harley Davidson Street Glide Special. Both are big, full-fairing cruisers with plenty of torque, long wheelbases, highway comfort, and just enough storage to justify those saddlebags. Both are aimed at riders who want a commanding presence on the road and a little bit of modern luxury to go with it. But here's the kicker. Indian's Challenger Limited starts at $27,999, while the Harley-Davidson Street Glide Special clocks in at just under $27,000, depending on trim and options. Indian fans will point to features like the 6-axis inertial measurement unit and Brembo brakes. Sure, on paper, those sound like impressive tech add-ons, but in real-world riding, the advantages are minimal at best. Why? Because this is not a track bike. The footboards scrape long before that 6-axis inertial measurement unit ever makes a difference, and the ride modes barely offer meaningful variation for the kind of riding these bikes are built for. Long, lazy highway miles, not carving up canyons or pushing the limits of cornering dynamics. It is like putting a racing spoiler on a delivery van. Looks cool, but you are not using it for that purpose. The Indian Challenger Limited is powered by a 1,768 cubic centimeter Power Plus engine that produces a claimed 128 pound-feet of torque. That figure might catch your attention until you realize that most independent dyno tests show real-world torque numbers in the 115 to 120 range. Not bad, certainly, but not exactly a world beater either. And considering the bike weighs approximately 840 pounds, the power-to-weight ratio is not dramatically better than Harley's offerings. Now compare that to the Harley Davidson Street Glide Special, which comes with the Milwaukee 8 114 cubic inch engine, roughly 1,868 cubic centimeters. It puts down a tested 123 pound-feet of torque, but crucially it does so at a lower revolutions per minute range. That means more usable grunt earlier in the rev band, which is exactly what bagger riders want. Even though the Harley weighs a bit more at approximately 853 pounds, the performance trade-off is minimal. And here is where Harley starts pulling ahead. Resale value? Indian loses again. Harley Davidson motorcycles are known for retaining their value exceptionally well, particularly in the bagger segment. Indian, by comparison, suffers steeper depreciation after only a few years. This is not just an anecdotal observation. It is a reality reflected in dealership trade-in values and private party sales data. A used Challenger Limited will fetch thousands less than a comparably aged Street Glide Special, often for no good reason other than the fact that buyers trust Harley's brand and longevity more. But price is only part of the problem. Let's talk about where these bikes are actually sold or not sold. Number 5. Dealer Desert. If your Indian motorcycle breaks down on the open road, you better hope you're within city limits. Because when it comes to dealership coverage, Indian is absolutely nowhere near the level of Harley Davidson. This is not a minor inconvenience. This is a serious liability, especially for riders who actually ride their bikes the way they're meant to be ridden, far, fast, and often. Harley Davidson has spent decades building out one of the most robust dealer networks in the world. As of the year 2025, Harley Davidson operates close to 700 authorized dealerships across the continental United States alone. That is not even including third-party service providers that specialize in Harley Davidson motorcycles, or the independent shops with certified mechanics who have been working on Harley Davidson engines since the 1970s. Indian? You would be lucky to find even 180 dealerships across the same stretch of road, and many of those are buried inside multi-brand Polaris showrooms because when you're out on a ride, whether it's a weekend cruise through the hill country of Texas or a multi-state trip across Route 66, you do not want to be stranded in the middle of nowhere with no dealer within reach. Let's say you're cruising somewhere between Austin and New Braunfels on a cool autumn afternoon. You're enjoying the road, the wind, and the hum of your engine. Then your buddy rolls up next to you and says, "Hey man, you're leaking coolant." You pull over and see the unmistakable trail of green liquid dripping from under your Indian's frame, soaking the back tire. You are stuck. If you are on a Harley Davidson motorcycle, your story has a happy ending. You can limp your bike into the nearest Harley Davidson dealership, which might only be 5 or 10 minutes away. Someone at the service department will probably already have the exact part you need because Harley Davidson service departments are stocked to handle real-world issues quickly. You'll be patched up, back on the road, and finishing your ride by sunset. Now flip that scenario. Imagine that you are riding an Indian Challenger. That dealership? It could be over 50 miles in either direction. And if you call ahead, there is a good chance they will not have the right part in stock. Because Indian's supply chain is smaller, slower, and less consistent than Harley Davidson's. You are not limping anywhere. You are calling a tow truck, sitting on the side of the highway and watching your day, and your trust in your bike fade into the distance. That story is not a rare one. Across owner forums, you will find countless tales of Indian riders stranded with mechanical problems and no nearby support. Coolant leaks, faulty sensors, battery drain issues, electrical gremlins. The kind of problems that would be minor inconveniences on a Harley Davidson become full-blown catastrophes on an Indian simply because help is too far away. Even routine service is a hassle. Harley Davidson owners can schedule maintenance every 5,000 or 6,000 miles at almost any dealership in any state, often with same-day turnaround. Indian owners have to plan oil changes, tire replacements, and warranty work around the availability of their nearest dealership, which might be over an hour's drive one way. That is not freedom. That is a restriction. When it comes to long-distance dependability, Harley Davidson's dealer network gives riders peace of mind. That safety net, the ability to ride confidently, knowing that help is never too far away, is something Indians simply cannot offer. And even if you manage to reach a dealership with your Indian motorcycle, don't expect a warm welcome like Harley Davidson gives you. Of course, even if the dealership gave you a hug, there's still not much you can do with an Indian once you own it. Number 4. Customization? Good luck. If Harley Davidson is the Lego set of the motorcycle world, then Indian is the sealed plastic figurine you are not supposed to touch. For decades, Harley Davidson has dominated the world of motorcycle customization, not only because of the bikes themselves, but because of the vast, ever-expanding universe of third-party support. It is not just a brand, it is an entire ecosystem. If you want to build your dream bike from scratch, upgrade your exhaust, fine-tune your suspension, or make your ride uniquely yours, Harley Davidson practically hands you the blueprint and gives you the freedom to go wild. That kind of modular thinking is exactly why so many riders call Harley Davidson motorcycles two-wheeled canvases. From Vance and Hines exhaust systems to Öhlins shocks, from Arlen Ness handlebars to Saddlemen seats, Harley Davidson riders enjoy a virtually limitless supply of aftermarket options. You could take a bone stock Sportster or Dyna and turn it into a full-on bobber, a cafe racer, a tracker, or a touring machine without ever setting foot in a Harley Davidson dealership again. The platform is so widespread and so well supported that even complete frame-up builds are possible using only third-party components. Some riders have even rebuilt their entire motorcycles using nothing but aftermarket parts. And the best part, that universe is still growing, with new parts and companies entering the Harley space every year. Now let's look at Indian. If Harley Davidson is a bustling metropolis of customization, Indian is a cul-de-sac with one store that closes early. Most of Indian's aftermarket options come directly from Indian itself, which means you are stuck playing by their rules. Want louder pipes? Better hope Indian makes some that fit your model. Thinking about replacing your bars or upgrading your seat? Again, you are probably heading back to the Indian website or showroom. And while a few companies like Freedom Performance or Lloyd's Garage have dipped their toes into Indian support, the variety and accessibility pale in comparison to what Harley Davidson offers. Even when it comes to performance upgrades, Indian hits a wall pretty quickly. While Harley Davidson offers factory-supported performance upgrades all the way up to Stage 4, with parts like high-lift cams, big bore kits, high-flow injectors, and more, all covered under warranty, Indian stops at Stage 3. Worse yet, those Stage 3 upgrades only apply to bikes with the Thunderstroke engine. So if you are riding a Scout or an FTR model, you are out of luck. No official performance upgrade path exists beyond some minor bolt-ons or slip-ons, and even those come with warranty gray areas. It is not just the hardware either. The culture is missing. Harley Davidson riders have entire YouTube channels, local garages, and tuning shops dedicated to extracting every bit of performance, style, and personality from their bikes. There is a Harley look, a Harley sound, a Harley way of doing things, and a whole community built around helping each other achieve it. Indian, by comparison, feels like a closed loop. The brand has never fostered the same do-it-yourself spirit. The forums are thinner, the how-to videos are fewer, and the culture of builders, backyard mechanics, and tinkerers just is not there in the same way. And if you think Indian's lack of customization is bad, wait until you hear about how confusing their bike lineup actually is. Number 3. A lineup with no direction. What exactly is an Indian motorcycle in the year 2025? That is the million-dollar question, and the answer is not just unclear, it is almost impossible to pin down. While Harley Davidson has spent decades cultivating a focused, recognizable identity for each tier of its lineup, Indian appears to be throwing paint at the wall, hoping something sticks. The result is a disjointed catalog that feels more like a collection of half-developed ideas than a cohesive motorcycle brand. Start with the Indian Scout family. On paper, it sounds like a solid foundation, but in practice, the Scout lineup is confusing and repetitive. There are multiple versions of the same motorcycle, all with nearly identical displacement and styling, yet split into various submodels with only cosmetic differences. You have the Indian Scout, the Scout Rogue, the Scout Bobber, and the Scout Bobber 20. These motorcycles all share the same 1,133 cubic centimeter V-twin engine, and the main distinctions between them come down to paint schemes, handlebar shapes, and whether or not the seat has a rear pad. From a rider's standpoint, this kind of overlap offers little real choice. There is no unique engine tuning, no major performance differentiation, and certainly no change in core riding ergonomics or intended use. It is the motorcycle equivalent of buying the same sandwich 4 times, each time with a slightly different wrapper. Then there is the Indian FTR lineup. The original idea behind the FTR was promising. It was meant to be Indian's performance street bike inspired by their flat-track racing heritage. And yes, the FTR does have a sporty riding posture, more aggressive geometry, and a liquid-cooled engine. But in the real world, the FTR does not quite compete with true performance naked bikes. It is too heavy, too expensive, and too awkwardly placed in the market. The FTR feels like a novelty act rather than a serious contender. Indian wanted to build a street fighter. Instead, they built a question mark. And now we come to the Indian Challenger, arguably the brand's flagship motorcycle. You would expect the biggest, most expensive model to also have the biggest engine and most power, right? Wrong. The Challenger, which is Indian's premier bagger with a fixed front fairing, actually uses a smaller engine than other motorcycles in the Indian lineup. Its engine displaces 1,768 cubic centimeters, which is less than the 1,890 cubic centimeter Thunderstroke found in the Chief and Springfield models. So their top-tier bike has a smaller engine than their mid-tier cruisers, and no, there is no logical reason why. The confusion does not stop there. Indian's cruiser and touring models like the Chief, Chieftain, Springfield, and Vintage are almost indistinguishable to the average buyer. Their silhouettes are nearly identical. Their weight, power, and even price points are so close together that unless you are deep into spec sheets and side-by-side comparisons, you would be hard-pressed to explain what makes one different from the next. The Vintage and Chief have overlapping styling cues, and nearly all of them are available in Dark Horse editions, which adds another layer of visual sameness across the lineup. This lack of clear segmentation makes it difficult for potential customers to figure out which motorcycle suits their needs. Instead of guiding the rider through a natural progression from beginner to seasoned cruiser enthusiast, Indian dumps a bunch of vaguely differentiated bikes in front of them and hopes brand loyalty or paint color will do the rest. Spoiler alert, it will not. But if you did manage to figure out what bike you want, just hope it does not break, because fixing it might be a nightmare. Number 2. Harder to maintain, harder to trust. There is no denying that Indian motorcycles ride well when they are working. They are smooth, torquey, and undeniably refined, whether you are cruising down the highway or carving through open back roads. On paper, the performance is all there. Indian delivers the kind of power and responsiveness that turns heads and earns praise. But riding a motorcycle is not just about those moments when everything is working perfectly. It is also about what happens when things go wrong, when something breaks, wears out, or just stops doing what it is supposed to. And unfortunately, that is where Indian starts to fall apart. Harley Davidson, on the other hand, has spent more than 120 years building not just motorcycles, but a complete ecosystem around owning one. It is not just a brand, it is a support system. Indian still feels like it is catching up in that department. Let us begin with something basic: parts availability. If you need a replacement part for your Harley Davidson, whether it is a factory original or an aftermarket upgrade, you have options, thousands of them. The official Harley Davidson catalog is massive, and the aftermarket is even bigger. And because there are dealerships and independent Harley shops across the country, odds are you can get what you need without much hassle. From a rural town in Montana to a major city in California, you are covered. Now compare that to Indian. Polaris simply does not have the same footprint. The parts pipeline is thinner. Riders often report waiting weeks, sometimes months, for basic replacement parts to arrive, if they can even be located. Local inventory tends to be sparse and back orders are common. If your Indian goes down, you are not riding. It is that simple. Then there is the issue of service documentation. This might seem like a small detail to some, but for do-it-yourself riders, it is everything. Harley Davidson produces extremely detailed service manuals. These are well organized, easy to find, and even shared among rider communities and online forums. Whether you are a weekend wrench or a seasoned mechanic, Harley gives you the tools to work on your own bike. Indian, by contrast, keeps its documentation close to the chest. It is harder to access, less user-friendly, and often vague where it should be clear. Many Indian owners find themselves forced to rely on dealership technicians for even minor repairs, not because they want to, but because they have no choice. If you like working on your own bike, Indian will make you fight for it. Now consider warranty service. While both Harley Davidson and Indian offer warranties, getting Indian to honor theirs can be a frustrating experience. Owners report delays, red tape, and resistance from dealerships when trying to file a claim. Even when a repair is approved, the process is slow and updates are minimal. Harley Davidson is the opposite. Their dealerships are trained, equipped, and responsive. When something breaks, it gets fixed. Fast. Finally, there is the culture behind the wrench. Harley techs are often riders themselves. They live it. They care. That passion shows up in every interaction. With Indian, you are dealing with a power sports division inside Polaris, a company that makes everything from snowmobiles to side-by-sides. It does not feel like a motorcycle brand. It feels like a corporate experiment. But even if you can fix the technical stuff, there is one thing Indian has never been able to repair: its identity. Number 1, Indian looks like a copy. If you wanted to be mistaken for riding a Harley Davidson, you would just buy a Harley Davidson. That is the entire problem with Indian motorcycles in a single sentence. It is not that Indian builds bad bikes. In fact, mechanically, many of their motorcycles perform well, offer solid torque, and use up-to-date technology. But when it comes to design, the first thing anyone notices about a motorcycle, Indian feels like an imitation, not a leader. That is a branding death sentence in the cruiser world, where style is just as important as performance. Let us start with the Indian Springfield. It is a full-dress cruiser with hard saddlebags, sweeping fenders, and a large windshield. But the second you park it next to a Harley Davidson Road King, the similarities are almost laughable. The Springfield's profile, its proportions, and even its chrome accents feel like they were designed with the Road King in mind, not to innovate, but to mimic. If you strip the badges off both bikes and asked a casual observer to pick the Harley Davidson, odds are they would point to the Indian. Not because it is a Harley Davidson, but because it wants to be one. Then there is the Indian Vintage. Leather saddlebags, soft seat, white wall tires, it is a full-blown retro cruiser. It mirrors the look of the Harley Davidson Heritage Softail Classic down to the fringes. And while Harley Davidson's styling feels earned through decades of iconic culture and continuous production, Indian's take on vintage design feels like cosplay. It is a costume of what a cruiser is supposed to look like, not an expression of Indian's own legacy. And that's ironic, considering Indian Motorcycle often markets itself as America's oldest motorcycle brand. If you are America's oldest, why are you designing your motorcycles like you are playing catch-up? And let us talk about the Indian Challenger, the supposed crown jewel of the Indian bagger lineup. This is the bike Indian fans swear by when they want to argue performance. But performance is only part of the story. Visually, the Challenger looks like someone bolted a cheap aftermarket fairing onto a cruiser frame and called it a day. The front fairing is bulky in all the wrong ways and lacks the sculpted confidence of Harley Davidson's iconic Batwing or shark nose designs. It does not look like it belongs on the bike. It looks like an accessory someone added later because they did not want to get caught in the rain. That is the core of the problem. There is no cohesive design identity. Harley Davidson motorcycles all look like they belong to the same family, whether it is a 48, a Road Glide, or a Fat Bob. Indian, on the other hand, looks like it has been borrowing notes from too many places. You have bikes that look like Harley Davidson copies, others that vaguely resemble Japanese cruisers, and then the FTR lineup that feels like it came from a completely different company. There is no strong, unifying design thread across the lineup in the year 2025. And that, right there, is the final nail in the coffin. Indian does not know what it wants to be. Think I'm wrong? Think I'm right? Drop a comment below and let's hear it. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button.